how is it that thou wilt manifest thyself unto us, and not unto the world? Jesus saith unto him, if a man love me, he will keep my words, and my Father will love him. And we will come unto him, and make our mansion with him. He that loveth me.
Hello, we're just doing a little pre-recorded video here. I want to answer a question I recently was asked. I want to try and make this brief as possible and not ramble. They asked, how is it, and this is a great question, how is it that an innocent person, an innocent child, could be a sinner? And my response, I immediately, when I heard that question, I smiled because the way my brain works, I immediately flipped it. I'm like, well, how could they not? How could an innocent child not be a sinner? How could someone innocent not make mistakes? How could adults not expect children to make mistakes and therefore be prepared for it in a way that is sensible and reasonable? And that's how I looked at it as a parent. Children are innocent. That means partly there's ignorance. I mean, think about the Garden of Eden. It's a perfect story of what happens. You're innocent, yes, but this lack of understanding leads to inevitable error and suffering and pain. And a parent is supposed to be there to help help you learn to deal with your errors in such a way as to not be hurt. You're just like a hot stove. You gotta understand, a small child who has no understanding, is completely innocent. They could touch a hot stove and damage themselves badly. Well, I wouldn't qualify that as sin. It is a mistake. And if I were to do it, I would be sort of sinning because I'd be tempting God and thinking I could just put my hand on a hot stove. You know what I mean? It can lead to eventual sin. And of course, they're not, but they will be, inevitably. That's the price of knowledge. You begin to understand good and evil, and you make mistakes in spite of yourself, especially when you get trapped in a certain kinds of, patterns and things that, and, generational things that can block people from understanding. For my part, I understood my children would not understand things. And so, if they did something wrong, like one time we got this new piano and they carved it up. And it made me mad, not terribly, but they carved into the wood grain with like a pencil or their fingernail, I don't know what, but they did these marks. They marked it up. And boy, was I mad. And but I couldn't punish him because I never told him not to do that. And the funny thing is, when I was a kid, I did the exact same thing to my grandfather's guitar. And I was always embarrassed about it for years. And it wasn't until I got it back years later that I realized this was the guitar I vandalized. Vandalism is something it's wrong. When you do it as an adult, it's bad. But as a child, he was ignorant, even though he was like 10. And I was a little annoyed because he was like 10, but I was like, you know what? He doesn't know. I'm like, if you ever do that again, that is a spankable offense as far as I'm concerned. Vandalism, we don't do that. And he never did it again, of course. Because he didn't understand. But once he did, he didn't want to do evil. And I don't expect that. I taught my children to love that which is good and to seek that which is good. And because I knew that they would be sinners and they needed to be guided towards the right path. I don't understand how Christians who think that, what's really weird is some Christians think that all you have to do is believe in Jesus and doing the right thing doesn't matter. And then they'll scream at their kids, you're going to hell, when their kids have the most faith of anybody. Children believe automatically. You don't have to tell them to believe, but you do have to tell them that they're going to make mistakes or be ready for them to make mistakes. Anyways, of course, I'm, that energy is not directed at the person who asked the question. I know why they asked the question, because parents are mean to their kids. And I don't get that, because it's like, I am here to foster my children. I'm here to raise them up the way I think God is raising me up in his way. So, and I try to be a good father in that regard and model what I think righteous discipline and because to me, discipline is about doing the right thing, not about punishing people. That's punishing is when discipline fails. Good discipline is held together with love. And there's a little fear there too, because, I never want to make my wife unhappy. That's something I'm afraid of. Not like I live in fear of it, but it's something that no, not that. Not that. Anyways, let's not make this long. 5 minutes is long enough. How can they not? Innocence and ignorance leads to error. It's an adult's job to help guide them through that process in a loving way that is looking out for their best interest for their future. So that, because if I help a child do right, other people, and I know this because I raised 8 children. I have 1 child left, but I have 2 teenagers, a child, and 5 adult children, so I know a little bit about the subject. You are gentle yet firm. Sometimes, some things, I was spanked exactly twice growing up. I received the belt exactly twice. And the belt for older kids for stealing and for striking my brother in anger. And I didn't wound him, so I hurt him. He was injured from it for several days. So I deserved it, and it did me good. And it can. But the thing is, when adults are capricious and just random, and children need a predictable, if you do reasonable things and they understand what it means, as they come to understanding, they naturally are obedient. They're naturally faithful. It's very easy to guide a child in the right way. Raise up a child in the way that he should go, and he will not depart from it. Especially if you demonstrate how that right way is such a benefit to them. Right now. Yes, and in the world to come, life everlasting, as I believe. But certainly right now, it matters what you do right now. I say to the Lord, sometimes I doubt, but I look to the Lord and I say, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. Lord, I believe, watch me. Watch what I do. You'll see how much I believe in you by what I do and how I handle your name and your word. Anyways, so that's my answer. Adults should be aware of the fact that children will make mistakes, and they should handle it in an adult way that thinks about their future and thinks about how life is going to treat them and takes some sort of account. I love my children. I love other people's children. Not in any, I do. I love other people's children because I want them to grow up into people that make the world a good place to live. I don't want them to grow up into awful, nasty people who have all these grievances and wounds and pain from their raising. It's a terrible thing in the world, but it's like all that one can do is, one can speak against it to begin with, and I suppose one can do when one sees it, do something about it, if possible, when possible. It's the way the world is. One can be better than that. That's one. Certainly, you can be better. Shine as lights in a dark generation. That's what Jesus calls us to be salt and light, not to be just like everybody else. Certainly not. Anyways, that's answered my question. Thank you for listening. And to all my regular listeners, there you go. Until next time, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and he is the fulfillment of the law. I'm going to get some music here.
Not my sayings. And the word which you hear is not mine. Father's which sent me. These things have I spoken to you, being